Welcome to She Said Homestead, the podcast that explores homesteading from a range of perspectives. We're Sage and Michaela, two homesteaders, each with unique experiences, properties, and future goals for our homesteads. We're discussing various homesteading topics, sharing our personal experiences as women working full-time who are managing homesteads as well, and shining a light on the stories of other inspiring homesteaders.
Before we dive in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy our podcast, please consider leaving a review. It really helps us grow and share these homesteading stories with even more people.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Sage from Terra Nova Acres.
And I'm Michaela from Calico Cow Acres, and we both have homesteads in Western North Carolina.
Today, we have a guest here with us. We have China from Little V Farm. We're very excited to have a conversation and get you to teach us some stuff. So welcome.
Hi guys. Thank you for having me.
We have a bunch of questions to ask you today, but before we get into those, why don't you tell us what you got up to this week?
So this week has been pretty quiet for me because we just had a pretty bad snowstorm come through. And it was our first real snowstorm that we've had since we moved here 2 years ago. And it was our first snowstorm for most of our animals. So it was like just kind of getting them prepared, getting them through the snowstorm. And then once it was over, it was just like we've been melting for days. So we've been inside and just literally it's been a slow, icy melt. And then I'm really excited too because we were doing some garden planning and I'm going to go buy some seeds finally. I'm going to do like our big seed purchase on Friday. So that has been like my planning because I'm determined to do one purchase of seeds this year, just one. And so I'm doing that on Friday.
Where do you usually get your seeds from?
So I get my, we get our seeds all locally at Morgan County Seeds. They have a website as well. It's morgancountyseeds.com. But they are an Amish place locally here in Missouri, and they're in Morgan County, Missouri. They're north of like Osage area for anyone who is in the Missouri area, but they're amazing because they are very inexpensive and their seed selection is insane. That's where we get all of our starts from too, whenever we do starts. But just, you cannot beat their prices. Like it is by far and away like amazing with the selection.
Do you order any online?
So I do, or I have. There's a few brands that I've used that I've had like really good success with. Last year was our first year gardening. And last year being 2024 now, at this point, like we're officially in 2025. So, I got a bunch of seeds from Survival Seeds. I don't know if you guys have heard of them before, but they're really neat if you're starting out because you can buy kits. So you can just buy like tomato kits, you can buy like herb kits, flower kits, pepper kits. And so it's really cool if you just want to get a variety of different pepper seeds and try it out, but you're not sure what you want to get. And I had great success with those. And then I know a lot of people recommend Seed Saver Exchange. I've never used it, but I had a few people tell me it's literally like the best thing ever. So I'm going to check that out, I think, this year too. But generally hoping to get them all in person at Morgan. But I know they'll have some varieties they just won't have, like certain, specific peppers or tomatoes I'm looking for, but I'm hoping to get as much as possible in person.
It's really easy for us to get into seed talk and then we don't stop. It happens.
Oh my gosh, yeah, same.
Very often.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
What about you, Michaela?
I have been working on our 2-year recap video for what feels like infinity now. I'm so sick of working on it. I'm halfway done at this point. Really ready to be done with it because trying to download old footage and find all of it, especially when I know that I lost a bunch of it from 3 months of this past year, and then trying to make up for it in the recap video with my iCloud footage. It's not a fun time. I have probably been working on it for 3 weeks and I just got to be halfway done with it tonight. So I've been trying to get that done. My goal is to get that out Friday, but we'll see. If it's out already by the time people listen to this, you'll know that I did that. I'm not sure at this point. But in fun news, I finally got out to the garden because we had some nice weather. It's been in the 40s and 50s again. And I weeded a whole bunch because I neglected doing that at all last year. And now that it's not 100 degrees, I can actually go outside and do that without having an asthma attack, which is really cool. I mulched a whole bunch of my garden, and it just felt really good. Like, it felt good to get outside. I got a little sweaty. I was breathing cold air, and my garden looks a lot more like there's progress, probably, than there actually is. And then I also got houseplants. I used to have like hundreds of houseplants, and then we moved all over the place. We moved to Charlotte, then back to Michigan, lived with our friend, bought a house, moved to the camper down South Carolina, then here. And I had to give my plants away, and the ones that like were given back to me were kind of all dead at that point. And then we had the renovation, and I was like, you know what? I have the option to keep 2 plants alive inside, and that is my inherited Christmas cactus from my great grandpa, and that thing's barely hanging on, and my aloe plant that has like 100 children growing inside of its thing. So I got some new plants this week, and I'm very excited about it.
I have some plants that I could probably give you cuttings from. I think almost everything I have will root in water, so I can hook you up.
It really depends on when you're planning to do that, because if it's in like 2 months, wait until winter.
Fair.
I'm gonna have like 10,000 seedlings to deal with in a couple months, so
Right.
I don't need more baby plants. But at some point, I will take you up on that. What were you up to this week, Sage?
I think the biggest thing from this week was that I realized that my ram needs to go. I got him with the intention to keep him as breeding stock from here on out, but knew in the back of my head that if he became a hazard to me and the people that I have over here, that he couldn't stay. And so he has started to become a health hazard and knock me over. And for the size of my homestead, it's just not going to work for me. So I think I'm going to have a neighbor come over and help me humanely do that whole process and put some lamb in my freezer because he's technically young enough to still be lamb. So I wasn't really expecting that. That's been on my mind a lot, and also the sheep, the ewes, are a lot more pregnant than I had originally anticipated, so it's just kind of a rush timeline of getting all this stuff, getting all the equipment to be able to be prepared for milk, to milk them, and what to do with the milk once I get it in the kitchen, which is like butter and cheese and all the things. It's a lot of equipment. I thought I was going to have a lot more paychecks to split that out between, but turns out not so much.
Did you decide against trying to sell him then?
I haven't fully decided against selling him. It's just one more thing, and I already have a list that's incredibly long, and it's people to coordinate with, and then they back out on you, and I don't have a great experience trying to sell animals on like Craigslist. I don't think I'll get to it before the time that like that needs to be done. And then that feeds me, but it also feeds my neighbor, like barter for the labor that help with food. And in my mind and how I view my animals, that's still honoring them, that's still respecting them. But enough about us. We are here to talk about China tonight. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, it's funny because initially my like 20 plus years in retail management makes me want to give you like our elevator speech, which is like basically you're supposed to be able to introduce yourself in the time it takes you to take an elevator ride with somebody. That's like initially where my mind goes to, but we'll skip that. So yeah, hi. I am super excited to be here, you guys. I am China, like you said. And my husband and I have a 12-acre homestead. We're on a child-free homestead out here in central Missouri, and pretty much have no idea what we're doing. We just started exactly 2 years ago. So with zero experience, we moved from Central Florida, and my husband's actually from the Bronx. So like when I tell you we have no experience, we have no experience. And it's funny because, like I said, I was in retail for over 20 years and transitioned into HR. And so now I'm a like an HR business partner and work from home remotely. So that's kind of like how I find my balance. I find every single homesteader you talk to will have a different balance, whether it's with a partner, on their own, working out of the home, in the home. Everyone does it a little different. And so I work full time from my house office for a company in HR. So I have a, like a big girl job, I guess, Monday through Friday. And then besides that, yeah, we have the homestead here.
Okay, before we get into our deeper questions, we're gonna go through some quick rapid fire questions. So the first question we ask everybody is, what is your favorite color?
My favorite color is orange. It has literally been my favorite color my whole life. And actually, fun fact, it's also my husband's favorite color, which I find great just because, like, I don't think a lot of people like orange. Like, it's not very, like, typical. And my other favorite fun fact is my mom, who is, like, the best gift giver on the planet. My whole life, always for, like, Christmas and birthday, everything's always orange. Like, she finds a way to incorporate orange color into everything she's giving me. Like, if it doesn't need to be colored, she's making sure it's orange. So it's nice. It's, like, my thing.
That's so thoughtful.
Yeah, she really is. She is like the best gift giver ever.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that their favorite color is orange. I mean, to be fair, I don't ask many people that question. But most of the people on here say green. All right, what's your go-to coffee order?
So I am an iced coffee drinker. And it's funny, I'm actually not, I'd recently, I would say probably in like the last 2 months, come into like my coffee own, like I'm actually like drinking coffee at home regularly, but it's because my husband drinks hot coffee and I drink iced coffee, and he drinks coffee like it's water. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not a big coffee person. And so we recently went to Scooters, which I don't know if you guys have those on the East Coast, but it's, like drive-through coffee place. And I ordered an iced coffee, which in the Midwest is like a conundrum. They like don't understand iced coffee. They always want to give you like lattes, or they want to give you like a cold brew or like a nitro cold. And you're like, I just want my coffee over ice. Like, that's it. And when you order iced coffee out here, they charge you for like all these different. So like a medium iced coffee is like $8, and you're like, but like a hot medium coffee is like $4, which I just want to cold, like just leave it on the counter, and let it sit there and then just pour ice into it. But long story longer, my coffee order is a medium iced coffee with oat milk usually, and then either like vanilla syrup or just like liquid sugar. It's real basic to get there. Longest way to get there. That's just my like rant with Midwest iced coffee, I guess.
So regardless of cost, care, anything that goes into it, if you could have any farm animal or any animal on your farm in the world, what would it be?
Oh gosh, in the world. And my very first realistic thought, I'll give you that. I'll give you two. I'll give you like never gonna happen, but like on the other end, like potential, like maybe this could help make it happen by putting it in the universe. I really want donkeys. I want donkeys really bad. Like that's the more realistic one, obviously here. Like I'm dreaming big, but I can dream bigger than donkeys. But like my realistic dream is donkeys. And if I could have any like big animal in the world, it'd probably be some like domesticated large cat that like followed me around into the woods and like protected me and, let me lay on its stomach to sleep and stuff, like a black jaguar or something. Like that's realistically what I would want for absolutely no reason except to feel like, a priestess. But yeah, that would be it. But like donkeys for real, right? Like we have a neighbor down the road. Our road is probably like 5 miles, I think, from start to finish. And I don't know how many houses, like, a house every 500 feet or so, whatever. And at the end, there's a tiny, cute little house, and they have like a triangle property, and they have a triangle like front part, and there's 3 little donkeys in it, and they're just like the sweetest things. And she's always out there with them, and I'm just like,
all right, how about your favorite place in the entire world? If you can go anywhere, where would you go?
so my favorite place I've ever been is probably a toss-up between Spain, Madrid, Spain, more specifically, and Alaska. Those are probably 2 of the more like iconic places I've been to. Just like really epic trips, everything you'd expect it to be, just like amazing. I think for me, if there was like, if I could just travel like, first class on the long flight all the way, like, somewhere far, far away, I would love to go to Japan. I've been to China, but I've never been to Japan. And I know it's something that like, it's a like long-term dream of my husband's. So I think it would just be like epic, to be able to share something like that. So Japan is definitely like on the list, I guess, realistically. I don't know how real that list is. It's on the list. But yeah, if I could go somewhere again though, I would probably say Spain or Alaska would be somewhere I'd go back.
You've been to some cool places.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to say that I have traveled really extensively in my time. My dad and I, after I turned 18, basically like his vacation time every year, I'm an only child by him, so him and I would take trips together. And so we've traveled the world pretty heavily together. And then after I kind of got a career and was working really heavily, my vacation time turned into that as well. And so I would start traveling. And then my husband and I, when we got married, we started doing more domestic travel because I hadn't done a lot of the US. I had done a lot more international. And so that's kind of actually what got us here, but I'm sure we'll get into that, how I got into Homestead. So,
Okay, the last one, at least for me, would be a hard question, but what is your biggest pet peeve?
so for me, I would say, what is my biggest pet? My biggest pet peeve is probably going to be just like I don't know, like a lack of a backbone of it all, I guess I would say. People that have strong belief system but don't have like the strong vocabulary or vocality or like the voice to go behind it, I guess. Like I don't like bullies at all, and I don't stand for bullying at all. And so I just don't like when people like to kind of be two-faced and act like they're one way, especially when it comes to their belief system. I just find it more icky to me to think that we're on the same page or that you support me or that we support the same people and the same ideals, and then I find out you don't. I'm like, well, like, you're kind of shook by it because you're just like, whoa, like I would never expect that. So I just prefer people that are strong and vocal in their who they are and what they stand for.
All right, so where are you located?
So I am almost like dead center in Missouri. I'm like super central Missouri.
Can you kind of just describe your homestead setup for us, like your animals? You already said you have 12 acres, all that.
So we have 12 rectangle acres, just straight rectangle. It's about 250 feet across and then just straight back. So whatever that is, like straight back. We actually picked the property because our house is only about 50 feet off of the front of the property. All the property is behind the house, and we really wanted our privacy in that way. We wanted to, like have everything kind of behind the property. So we do have like basically right after we moved in, we put a privacy fence up. That was like our big investment into the property. And so we put a privacy fence up. So we're all closed in. So it is real nice back there, and all 12 of the acres is like real cozy. Our entire front half of, the entire front third of the property is pastured for the most part. The previous owners were beef like ranchers basically, and so they had a few cattle that they raised here. And so we are lucky enough, especially in Missouri, our ground is like hard rock and clay. You have to drill like within 2 inches, you have to drill into the ground. And so it's wonderful that they pastured half of the property already, quite frankly. So we turned half of that pasture into an orchard. And so we have a little baby orchard right now. We started over last year. We'll probably have to replace some of the trees, honestly, because, first year, blues or whatever. But we have fruit trees over there. We have about 6 trees. And then behind the trees, we have most of our outdoor garden space. So we have about 1,000 square feet outside, with all raised beds outside that we built. My husband mostly built our wood raised beds. And then behind that is where we have like our aviary and our chickens. So we have turkeys and we have hens and roosters all together in like a big electric netting, so they can kind of pretty much free range, with some some boundaries on them, but they, they have an automatic timer. They come out and they just get to do their thing during the day, and then they go back to bed at night. So we have them together, and then behind them, we have our pigs. So we have two pigs, Gail and Dewey. They were named after characters from Scream, the horror movie. And so we have Gail and Dewey. They're Cooney pigs. they're in the back. They're kind of at the half line of our property, and where they are, they started rooting for us. So they're in the front part of like our wooded part of the homestead, and we have them in there tilling for us and just kind of cleaning that out. There's a lot of old like raspberry vines and stuff, and they're just eating that all away for us. And then the whole back half is all wooded with oaks. So pretty much that's it. The only other thing we have actually is on the far side of our property, on the other side of the short part of the rectangle, we have our greenhouse. We did build the greenhouse right after we moved here. It was like the first thing we did. We have a like 30-foot by, I think it's like 20-foot greenhouse that we built. And so we have that big boy over on the other side of the property, kind of like in the middle of nowhere. Clearly we didn't know what we were doing yet, and we placed it in the most like obscure place, but we do have that large greenhouse, and that's kind of the whole property.
You said you've been there for about 2 years then?
Yeah, we moved from Florida in December of 2022. So yeah, exactly 2 years basically.
That's we moved here in October of 2022, so we've had our homesteads for
Yes.
almost the exact same amount of time.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Sage, you got yours in like February of 2022? I always forget.
I forget too, and it involves math, which is just real hard for my brain. But
Winter?
yes, I bought it January 2022. I moved here into February 2022.
Also, just to clarify, because I just assume that when somebody buys a homestead, they're buying a project house, because I did, but that's not always the case. Is your house like good to go? Is it a project house? Is it moldy and have to be torn down like mine?
I mean, I say no, but like probably. So our house is technically considered like a tiny home. It's just like a small home. We're at around 800 square feet, so we are like on the smaller side. But they did redo everything in the house pretty much. The house was built in 1980, so to me that was like 10 years ago, but realistically that was more than that. And so I'm sure there are some scary things like under, like I joke, but like the basement literally is like half finished. We get weird vibes down there. I've cleaned, I've saged, like it just gives vibes. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some scary things behind the walls. When we moved in, because we kind of came semi like sight unseen. And so when we got here, the day we got here, the entire house was infested. And at the time, what we thought was ladybugs, but it was, Asian beetles, obviously. And the drain had fallen off of the kitchen sink. And so every time you use the kitchen sink, the water was just like flowing into the kitchen. And the electric, we had like, I think it was some odd like 25 live wires like all over the house, like open, like we had all kinds of issues, but we got them all corrected. So technically no, but realistically, yes.
So then what made you want to start homesteading? What drew you to the lifestyle?
My husband and I had been married like less than a year, and we were in Florida, in Central Florida, and we had both just kind of changed careers in a way. We had both just had like job changes. So we owned a business in Florida, and it was doing really well, but I don't think either of us were super passionate about it. It was like a full service, like concierge business. So we would do home care and pet care. And I think both of us realized we loved the pet side of it, but like did not enjoy the people necessarily, or like the home side of it and like taking care of people's houses for them. And I was still doing HR at the time. I was in like a district HR manager. So I was like constantly like traveling store to store every single day. And our lease was up in February, and it was like September of 22. And we were paying, I want to say we were paying probably like $1,500 for a really nice 2-2 apartment in Central Florida, which I know for some people is like already, but it was going to go up to $2,400 in February because the cost had just gone up so bad in Florida. So we were like, we're not doing that. Like, we might as well leave and go, like buy something somewhere. Like, this is insane. And my husband's actually a huge YouTube person. Like, YouTube is like his go-to social media. Like, he loves just being on YouTube. And he found Sow the Land. I'm pretty sure that's where, or no, maybe it was Kevin and Sarah from, I can't think of what their page is right now, but it was either them or Sow the Land. And he was like, hey, we started looking at stuff and we just started watching videos. And then we found Jessica at Three Rivers Homestead, who we still like. She's every Sunday. I watch Jessica on Three Rivers Homestead. Her YouTube every Sunday comes out and we watch it. And we just started talking and we were like, is this something we could see ourselves doing? And we took a no planned, nothing booked trip from Seattle down to San Francisco. We flew out there and we just had a car. That's all we had. And we just booked random Airbnbs and like we stayed in a spaceship one of the nights while we were out there. And we just had this like awesome experience driving all the way down to San Francisco. And like we decided we're like, we would love to do this like full time. We would love to just be in nature. And we had this like really awesome like moment with some elk out in the woods. And like, we were just like, yes, like let's do this full time. Like, if we're not going to do it now, like, when are we going to do it? We have freedom to do it. Let's do it. And so we just started like narrowing down states that had different costs of living and the climate and, political beliefs and legalities of certain things. And, we just started looking and we narrowed it down to a few places and kind of fast forward and we ended up in random small town, central Missouri.
So how did you go about learning all of this, the homesteading skills, other than just watching YouTube?
I struggle with learning in any sort of typical way because I have ADHD and OCD. My brain tends to not be able to be contained. And when I try to focus on a topic, I really struggle with it. And so, we moved here, we jumped right into gardening in 2023 and grew nothing. Like, we basically grew like leaves. I could not get anything to give me any sort of like fruit of any kind. And we built this huge greenhouse, which now hindsight 2020, like, greenhouse gardening is not for like the faint of heart. It is really hard to do greenhouse gardening and get used to like managing weather, basically. You're like controlling the weather, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's just like a hard place to start. And so I got really defeated. And going into 2024, I like was looking at Andrew, my husband, and I was like, man, like, you built me this whole greenhouse. Like, we put all this together and I'm looking at you like in tears, so overwhelmed because like I don't want to go through another year of not growing anything. And I just feel like these spacing guidelines and like timing and frost and like zones, I'm like, this makes no freaking sense to me. And I don't understand how anyone grows anything and how we're all not starving. Like, I just don't understand this. Full-fledged like panic attack, like bawling in the greenhouse, like, I'm gonna quit homesteading. And he really was like, no, we'll figure this out. Like, we will figure this out. Just breathe. Let's start small. Let's start with what we learned. And he like helped me figure out how I like to learn things. And I am a hands-on, like, I need to do it. I need to watch you do it. And I need to, kind of figure this out. And so he built, I think like 12 or 14 raised beds over the last like year, like full year, not growing season, but like full year. And every time he built one, we'd fill it and we'd talk about what we wanted to grow in that bed and what would fit in that bed. And we would do that. And like, we just kept adding a bed on and adding a bed on. And so as elementary as it is, like, I literally was like, learning from the ground up, literally like little brick by brick and figuring it out. And then luckily, again, him being such like a YouTube, university sort of person, he would watch, and he also drives like about 45 minutes to work. And so he'll listen to YouTube videos on the way to work. And then he would say, okay, here's this video at 2 minutes and 35 seconds. She talks about this thing that you said you wanted to learn. And I will like listen and watch the video. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. Cause like, I can't get there. I can't spend the 2 minutes and 37 seconds to get to that point of the video. And so now, because I feel like we successfully grew in our garden in 2024, I learned, like, I feel like the plants like talk to me, and like the dirt talk to me, and like I understand, like it's like an animal. Like, is it thirsty? You need to give it water. If it looks dead, you need to get the dead off. If the stupid hornworms are coming in, you pluck them off and feed them to the chickens. You know, like you fall in love with the plants and you care for them, and that's really, as you know, holistic and like homesteadery as that sounds, like it really was, like that's what it was. Just love it. It's just
We're
hard because I feel like gardening has like gardening pressure, and like the it feels like everyone gets like 3 years in and forgot what it felt like to know nothing, and then they just start getting annoyed with everyone asking the most basic questions, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, like, were you raised this way? Oh, you were? Good for you. Then you should know we weren't. And like, not everyone knows this stuff. And so like, that's just a goal I have, is to always remember what it felt like last year, and then try to make sure that I make it make sense for someone else.
I
If I
always,
could.
every time somebody asks me a gardening question, which happens pretty often now, like they apologize for asking. And I'm like, listen, I am somebody who, as long as I have the mental capacity, I'm going to message you back and I'm going to give you probably way more information on this than you need. And that's what you need,
Mhm.
because the person who's like Jess from Roots and Refuge, she isn't going to message you back probably. Like, she doesn't have the time to do that. She doesn't remember what it's like to be somebody who's 1 year into this and crying because they have hornworms and don't know what to do. They don't want to touch them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's one of my pet peeves, is like when you get too big of a platform and people are like still asking those people solely, but they don't ask the smaller people who are like just right ahead of them who know. But I feel like I'm very clear about that, and people ask me a lot of questions. I don't know the answers to all of them, but I try.
Yeah, every time I get a message, because like I'm always checking like my requests and stuff, trying to stay on top of it, and like I'll get like a, oh, I didn't think you were going to respond to that, or a, oh my gosh, thank you for taking the time, or like, oh, I'm so sorry, and I'm like, you guys, like, I don't know what you think I'm doing. I'm like waiting to hear from all of you to ask me whatever, because I'm so excited to talk about it. Like, I'm like, it's literally never a bother. Like, message me and ask me any question you want. I promise I will make you feel like you made the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my like guarantee. It'll be the right choice, because I will be so excited to talk to you about whatever homesteading topic you want to talk about. Always.
Homestead Hype Girls. That's what our podcast should
Heck
be.
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to say, yeah, I'll totally have a conversation with you. I can barely keep up with the two friends that I try to keep up with at messages on Instagram. It's just one of those things
It
that
goes in
I
waves.
can't keep up with.
I don't know why. I started this group chat, and there's like I think there's like 95 people in it. And then we have a side group chat that's like, there's 4 of us, and it's called the Corn Orgy. And that is like, the name came from like how you pollinate corn. It's like this whole thing. But those girls are like the beacon, like my knowledge of everything. Like, you know, I don't know if you guys follow Vicky. She's like v.t2.o.max or whatever. But she literally is like the realest homesteader I've ever really like gotten to like talk to. Like, she just knows her shit. And like, it's so nice to feel like I have a resource from somebody who's like, oh, it's just because I've been doing this my entire life, you know? And like, it's just, I don't know, it's like cool to talk to somebody who's knows what they're talking about, and just like that vibe. And so like the relationships I've made out of Instagram are really cool. But like generally, like Instagram as a whole is like, you know, I can't. But yeah, the messages, it can get a lot. The group chat, I sometimes have to open. I'm like, oh my god, I've missed 75 messages, and I'm like, I can't. This is like too much for my brain to process.
So it sounds like your husband helps you. What does that division of labor look like for you guys? Is there anything that you particularly own? Do you kind of just attack everything together? How does that work?
So yeah, we're pretty 50-50. Again, that's like another one. I feel like everyone is so different on how they do things, and like I have friends who like their partners don't even enjoy homesteading. Like, they're not even involved. You know, they live there and they, you know, are happy to support you, but like they don't do anything. And then, you know, some that like my girlfriends are like, oh, I don't touch it, that's all him, you know. And for us, we're very 50-50. We have like a pretty good like actual like schedule, you know. So my husband gets up, Andrew, he gets up early and leaves for work before the sun's up. And so usually I will do morning like chore stuff. Like I'm like the morning animal chores. And then when he comes home from work, he like shuts it down, you know, and puts everyone to bed. And then usually on the weekends when we're both home, he'll either do it or we'll share it, you know, and kind of do that stuff together. And then with like bigger projects, all the planning is together. He does a lot of the builds, just because like I don't really enjoy them. Like I enjoy seeing them and I enjoy reaping the benefits of them, but I just find them I don't know, I just don't enjoy building. So he does a lot of the builds. Um, and then from actual like mid-season peak garden is packed, we will like rotate like fertilizing. I'll do it, then he does it. We harvest every day together. Like it's like we joke that like it's like what keeps our marriage, like it's like our center beacon, and we love it so much. Like it's huge for us.
Taylor and I are very similar. It's nice to have something to like bond over and like you spend time together because you have that common goal. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I've never had that before. I mean, work was always my focus until we got married, and I hate like saying that in that way of like, oh, now I'm married. But like, I mean, like that's all I had. Like I was a store director for Target in a super high volume store in Central Florida, and I was in retail, like I said, for like 20 years, and that's all I did. And I made good money and I traveled on my time off by myself, you know, like I did that and it was fun. And then like once we got married, and it was like I found my like best friend, this like fucking rock star. Like he is the best, and he taught me how to do this. Like I think that's the thing, is like he taught me how to grow food. Like what? Like, you know, like it's such a cool bond that we have, being able to go out there and do the stuff together, because it's such a mutual passion. And it's nice also not feeling like I'm dragging him. It feels like sometimes he's dragging me out there, you know, like he's like, come on, I want to go get my hands in dirt. And I'm like, man, like people would kill for this. Like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go out there and do that. So yeah, he's pretty cool.
When it comes to your guys' garden, what is your general philosophy around that? Do you guys do like no dig, organic? Do you have any special fertilizing situation, permaculture, any of that?
Yeah, I think realistically, in some theory somewhere, all of that is what we do. I think our big thing is like we refuse to say that we are like a certain, you know, like we are a permaculture or we are an organic, because like we're human. And so it might work great in this bed and not great in this bed. And so like generally we are organic, like across the board. That's like pretty, you know, it's not hard to accomplish when you're growing from seed yourself, and like we put our soil together ourselves and we pick our fertilizer out. Like you can manage that, you know, pretty closely, I guess. But does that mean we always are? No, you know. And then like we're all raised beds. So where our raised beds are, we did originally plan to do more permaculture. So we ran the pigs through there, you know, to kind of till it for us. And then we changed our minds and put weed fabric down and covered the whole area with weed fabric, and then put the raised beds on top of where the pigs tilled for us. And then when we moved the pigs further back, that's where the chickens are now, and that will be in ground. So like technically we're gonna have that be, you know, like literally no till at all, just, you know, let the earth do its thing. So yeah, I think we're trying all of it, and it's like every year we're gonna try and add in something or try a different process or a different way of doing something, and then just see what really works the best for us. I don't think we have this like spiritual connection to like any of it, or like whatever, you know, however people get about like we have to be, you know, permaculture. Like I think it's badass, and like if we could do it, absolutely, but like it just may not work. And so it's like whatever works is what we'll end up doing for us.
And so you mentioned that you have chickens, you have turkeys, you have pigs. What's your general philosophy around them? What role do they serve for you on the homestead?
So they all kind of serve different roles, but they all serve like working roles. They are not pets for us. So we don't have any animals outside of our house that are pets. Our pets are in the house, and our animals outside are loved and cared for, but they are not pets for us. So we have like even within a certain breed, we have different workers. So like we have turkeys, but we have meat turkeys, and then we have our heritage breeds that, you know, are still, they're about 6 months old. Our meat birds are past due. Stu and Mickey, they also are named after characters from Scream. But they are past due. They were supposed to be Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then you know how the holidays are, like sickness and this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden you have turkeys that are past due. So that we have them. And then like the pigs, same thing. Like we plan to move Gale to the freezer, our Kuni female. And then Dewey, we plan to get him a girlfriend and then potentially breed him. We don't know for sure if we'll do that, but like that's one of the, you know how it is, like that's on the list of things we might do. And then same thing with, you know, we have two separate flocks. We have our original flock, which is in a coop run, closed in run combo. And those are like our main layer girls. That's going to be our Well Summers and our Rhode Island Reds. And then like our outside flock that's with the turkeys. Those are like the fun, weird, you know, different breed birds that we just got a couple months ago. And like, they're just honestly not even great layers. We'll probably need more layers in the spring. So everyone just kind of plays a different role. We've had quail, we've had rabbits, like we've gone through a few different things, and you know, this kind of work.
Out of all of those things that you have, all of the animals that you have on your property, which ones are your favorite to either raise for meat or just whatever other purpose that they serve?
So this is going to go against what I was saying about not having pets. I would say my favorite animal that we have that I absolutely just love because they have the best personalities is turkeys. Like I'm obsessed with our meat turkeys, and I just love turkey so much. Stu and Mickey are special to me because we actually had 5 of them. So we had basically we had all the ghost face killers from Scream. That was all 5 of our turkeys. And then we had an attack and we lost 3. And Stu actually broke his neck and I nursed him back. And there was some controversy around that because people are like, if he's a meat bird, just put him out of his misery. But if we would have done that with attack, like we wouldn't have eaten him necessarily because he had just gotten attacked. So we didn't know like what was going on. So I actually nursed him back to health. And so now to obviously inevitably be moved to the freezer. But it was the right thing to do so his body didn't go to waste, you know, so we didn't raise him for all this time and then he just went to waste from, you know, an attack from a predator. So the turkeys are my favorite personality wise. I am not like, I'm probably gonna get canceled for this, honestly. I'm not a chicken person. Like we don't name our chickens really. Like a few have names, but like they're not flying up to sit on my shoulders. They don't like want to come run up. They want food from me and like that's it. And everything we have right now, we haven't butchered yet. So we did Cornish last year. We did meat birds and hated it because they were like little disgusting robots that you just are little mutants that like break their legs because they get so fat. I did not enjoy the experience at all. So we got the meat turkeys this year and we'll probably go that route moving forward just because they are much more of like an animal that can like function and process. And we're going to be butchering the pig for the first time this year. So that will be a big one too because we're going to do that ourselves. We've done everything just like we figured it out. And so that's what we're going to do with the pig as well. So yeah.
Sage, how long have you had your turkey?
Why do you keep making me do math? 2.5 years? I want to say 2.5 years.
I love turkey so much.
Do you think he'll weigh when you eventually butcher him?
I mean, he's past butchering weight now. I was gonna keep a breeding trio, so I had him and then 2 ladies, and then the ladies got killed off by predators, and now he's just kind of there. But to me, he serves a purpose because he's a good alarm. He's loud if something goes on, and so 1, it helps me if I'm sitting down at the house and I'm like, what's happening? But 2, it's just another layer of deterrent for anything that would want to get in and harm my animals, even though it didn't really help with the hawk today. Lost a chicken today to a hawk, but I knew something was going on because he was loud.
He does make some good noises. I enjoy them.
I don't always enjoy them. They get old. When you think of your quote-unquote perfect homestead setup, I guess, one, do you have that sort of vision in your mind? And if you do, what does it look like?
So I think we kind of have it, I guess. Like, we didn't have this like long-term goal. We didn't have this like homesteading dream. We weren't like, I see so many people that are like, you're living my dream, and I'm like, oh my God, it just like makes my heart like melt, that people want to live this sort of lifestyle and they think about it and dream about it for all these years. Like, we thought about it and we're just in a place to like, we have to make a choice and make a change. So we made the change and came out here. So like, are there things we would change about what we have? Of course, but like generally as we're taking this canvas and like building it, we're being really intentional to like add and do things that bring joy to like, ooh, that's exciting, on the homestead. Like, oh, I love that. Like, probably the last week or the week before, my husband found these like clearance fountains, like multiple clearance, beautiful, like cement block fountains with like all, and he was like, should I get these? And I was like, yes. And we'll put them here and we'll incorporate this. And so like, literally it's like every section we're adding, we're just being intentional to like make that like its own little dream utopia. Like the orchard is going to be its cute little like orchard, and they all have their little gnomes around them. And the garden has like a big center space we're intentionally building. So one day put a sitting area, and like we added string lights last year through all of the oak trees. Like, it's just like one thing at a time, but not to be cheesy. Like, yeah, like we kind of like are doing it, and it feels pretty cool. Well, it just like comes to us, I guess.
What is your favorite thing about the homesteading lifestyle that you guys have accomplished so far?
I would say probably just like our harvest last year. For 2024, we brought in like hundreds of pounds of tomatoes and peppers, and like hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And it was like we were floored. Like, we just didn't know what to do with it all. And I think after the previous year of like having nothing and almost quitting, it was wild to see what we could do and what we were capable of. And it's funny because if you would have asked me before this year, I hands down would have said butchering a chicken. Like, the first time you butcher an animal is a huge like rite of passage. That is like, for me, it is one of those like spiritual connection things. We're very intentional about it and want to make sure there's like no waste, so like that whole experience was like wild as a homesteader. But like, it's not easy. Take that with a grain of salt, but like, take this with a grain of salt. It's easier to kill an item, like a plant, for example, not a chicken, but it's easier to kill a plant than to keep a plant alive, right? So like, to me, it's, a bigger deal to like have a plant grow from a little seed and bring in hundreds of pounds of produce. Like, it is the coolest thing to me.
I had the exact opposite experience of you, where my first year here, I grew so many tomatoes, I didn't know what to do with them. And then the second year, 2024, we had like a drought, we had hail, we had a hurricane, and just like 110-degree weather all summer. It was horrible, and I didn't grow any tomatoes. And so I'm really hoping that next year is like, everybody always says year 3 is like the best year, like it's your garden's coming into its own. So I'm really hoping.
Yeah.
What about on the flip side of that? What's been your biggest challenge so far?
Raising animals. Raising animals is, I think, being like full transparent, raising animals for us, we talked about it because like, you go into the new year and you're like, all right, what do we want to expand on this year? Do we want to add more garden? Do we want to add more animals? Do we just want to like start to master what we're like, whatever. And we decided this year for 2025, we really have no plans of adding any new animals to the homestead. That doesn't mean we won't inevitably get more like laying hens or like meat birds or something, but that donkey dream, for example, is like, a few years off. Because I just find, people don't like to talk about this, but like, chickens are prey birds. They are prey. Like, they are prey for wildlife, and we live in a very rural, untouched part of Missouri. We don't have neighbors pretty much at all, and we have our back half of the property touches preserve. So like there's animals and there's structure builds, and I don't care what anyone says. You can dig the hardwire cloth as deep as you want. You can pour cement blocks on top of it. You can put an army man standing outside the door that says no trespassing, and like something is still going to get your animals eventually. Like you're going to have livestock loss, and it just is so deflating to like raise this whole animal. And it always feels like right before they lay their first egg or right before you're about to butcher, you get an attack and you have to start over. And you learn your lessons, and they get less, few and far between, and it becomes like a one-off chicken to a hawk, like you said, or something. But animals is not my favorite thing. And like, who wants to kill an animal? Like, I fully respect the process of growing and raising your own meat, but like, it's still a bummer. It's not fun. And like, you try to do it with dignity and make sure that there's no waste. And we really are huge on it. Nothing goes to waste, nothing. But it's still a bummer. I much rather like rip a plant out of, the ground and call it a day. So yeah, animals are my favorite.
This next question is one that I'm actually really excited to ask you in particular. Sage came up with this
Oh,
one.
okay.
But
Okay.
what do you think is the biggest misconception about homesteading or the homesteading community in general?
I think the biggest misconception is that there's two sides. There's the them and the us, basically. That there's the trad wives, and then there's like the loony bin, crazy feral housewives. Like, I think that is probably the biggest misconception, because that's like what's easier is just to create a divide, right? Like, you have to be one or the other. And I think like feminism in homesteading is like the biggest misconception, because realistically, like the point of homesteading is, for me, sorry, not trying to preach to what other people think, for me, is like just trying to be more self-sufficient and more one with the earth, and understanding what I'm putting into my body and on my body and around my body. And, I think it's having a choice to do what I want. And like homesteading is a lot about making choices to do what's best for you. And so that might be working off the property. That might be working on the property. That might be not working at all. That might be incorporating money into, what you grow out of the homestead and try to sell, what you grow off the homestead. And it's the same thing, I think, for women in homesteading. It's like you're either this beaten down like trad wife who just worships her evil husband who like doesn't care for her, and you have more kids than friends, or you're this like childless lonely woman who like has no happiness except to like rage against like people with kids. And it's like, it's just not the case. So I think it's just realizing that there's so many beautiful people in the community that have that same belief system, that are doing it to grow food and are doing it to be more intentional about what's going into their bodies. And I think there's such little you can control externally. So it's like trying to just control what you can. And I think honestly, like that's just like a huge, like false narrative within the community. And I think it needs to be squashed, because the whole point is really to build community within homesteading. It's to create, self-sufficiencies and barter systems and trading and intentional, trust in a community. I just think that that makes certain people uncomfortable, and it makes them scared to think that people don't need them and potentially could do it on their own. And so it's easier to create a divide. But I think we'll smart enough. I think people will come around full circle and bring it back to the food and the plants and animals and being excited over tomatoes. And like, we'll be good to go. But I just hope we get there soon.
So you identify as a progressive, child-free homesteader. What has your inclusive or exclusive homestead community experience been as maybe a less traditional homesteader?
Oh, it was honestly, like, not to be dramatic. It was traumatic. So I don't even really remember exactly when it happened last year, but I went from normal, like 3,000 followers, maybe, like feeling like I was rocking my life with like grub brands reaching out to me to like offer me free bag of grubs for like 4 reels. Like I was like pumped, you know, I was like, I'm loving this. And I was posting a reel like 5 times a week. Like I was just trying to be this like homesteader influencer, like everybody else, you know. And I saw this post that was anti LGBTQIA, and it frustrated me. And so I decided to post my first like non-homesteading, I guess, like kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna rip this band-aid off and tell people what I'm about. And I said something along the lines of like, you can't say you're a feminist and not support the LGBTQIA community. Like it's fact. Like if you're a feminist, you believe that everyone should be treated equal regardless of their gender. And so I just couldn't understand being anti like anyone in the LGBTQIA plus community and calling yourself a feminist. And I lost like half of my followers. Like I went literally from like 3,500 followers, which is not, you know, I mean, that's like fine, like normal. I literally lost like over 1,000 followers, like overnight. And I got all kinds of like, you're going to hell and like gross and men and women's bathrooms. I'm like, oh God, here we go. And I was shocked. Like I was just shocked. And so the next day I just kind of did my like who I am. Like this is who I am. Like you're gonna just pick up and you're gonna like no, like you're not gonna be affected by this, you know, sort of thing. Like, wait, no, I'm not gonna be like bullied down to like not say how I feel. And so the next day I posted my homesteading controversial post where I said, homesteading doesn't have to mean religion, kids, sourdough, animals. Like it doesn't have to mean any of those things. And that post overnight went viral, I guess. It had like, I don't know, I think I got like 7 million views or something. And I got like 10,000 followers in like 2 days. And I got like the most disgusting like hate messages. I got people that I thought I was close to, you know, because like you guys get it. Like I know anyone watching this, if they're not like in the internet world or in the social community, like these people become friends. Like you build relationships with people at a bare minimum that you feel like you have like-mindedness, I guess. And you know, I had someone who I had used the term to describe them as, I called them a bigot because they said something that was anti-trans, and I thought it was really hateful. And I had somebody who I thought was a good friend of mine message me and say, I'm sorry, like I've been called a bigot one too many times in my life. Like I can't stand behind that slur. And I was so confused because I was like, huh? I've never been called a bigot before in my life. Like I've never. And then it hit me like a light bulb. I was like, oh, only a bigot is mad about being called a bigot. Like, no wonder. And like, that's when it hit me because she was like, she told me, she's like, you don't know me. Like, we're internet friends. You don't know who I really am. And I was like, ew, first of all, like, ugh. But like, second of all, you're right. I can't expect everybody else to be as transparent about who they are as I am. And so like, long story longer, to get back to your question about homesteading, like it's been rough because I came into it thinking everyone was doing this for like chickens and tomatoes. And I found out quickly that was not the case. And so I was like, oh my God. And so through that process, I have now built this community of like, I mean, I adore the, you know, guys and gals that are in like some of our different groups. And like I said, the corn orgy, my girls, you know, in that group, like we've gotten each other through things over the last year, and they're social media friends and they're homesteading friends. And so, you know, as somebody who identifies as like, you know, this progressive child-free homesteader, I think it's not so much that I'm like standing there with this like sign that's really trying to blare it. I think it's more just trying to let other people know like, hey, I'm a safe space. Like, hey, you can come talk to me and you don't have to worry that I'm going to tell you something negative later, or I'm going to judge you for something, or I'm going to tell you that generally existing as the perfect human being you are is wrong. Like I'm never going to blindside you. And I think once you're blindsided by someone within the homesteading community, you know what that feels like. And then therefore like are cautious, because it really does feel like blindsiding sometimes. You're like, oh my God, that person was so great. We shared recipes. And now I saw that she liked this like hateful thing. You know, you're like shocked by some of it. And so I just want people to know like that's not going to happen with me. So, like, I guess that's really like why I try to create that space. And like from the child free standpoint, let's be real. Like, it's just as a woman, first of all, as a, you know, almost 40-year-old woman, as a married woman, you know, not having kids. Why? When? Like, now you have this homestead. What are you going to do with all that? You don't have a family to feed. You don't have, you know, this, that, and the other. Well, I still have to eat. Like, it's a wild concept, but like, you can do it without children. So I think it's just letting people know that it exists and it's not just one way.
I think that that is a huge part of at least why I enjoy doing the podcast, is because I feel like a lot of the homesteading space, at least in my experience, the channels that I've seen, the channels that I watch even, it's a lot of men in general are like usually the ones leading the accounts and filming videos and posting things, or it's very religious, or it's mothers. And I feel like there's not a lot of representation of, I guess, what we are. And not to say those are necessarily bad things, but I just like, I always want to be a safe place as well. And that's always been my hope for the podcast. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on here.
I think that's nice when you can just be able to be like mark this person as safe. You know what I mean? Like, it's good to know, like, it doesn't mean we agree on everything, but there are core values and there are core beliefs and there's just core inclusivity and just, you know, there's right and wrong, I guess, quite frankly, in my eyes. And it's just nice to know when you can be like, I know that person's like cool. I know like they're good people, you know, to their core.
How do you balance all of the homesteading needs and requirements with all of your other life obligations, with content creation, with work, whatever else you have on your plate?
Like not well, probably. I would say, honestly, like not well at all. I like that's also like I wish people that's always so funny because like when you talk about having kids and then you talk about like doing all these other things, I'm like, first of all, can we just be like, how do those people do it? Because I can barely raise myself. I've tried every type of like organizational tactic there is and like time management tactic. I feel like I'm lucky because I work from home. So, you know, being able to work from home has its perks. You know, I start my day at work at 8 and my husband leaves for work at like 5 or so. And so like I have the entire morning to sleep if I want or get up and take care of the animals before work if I want. Like it's like plenty of time, you know, for me. And like you said, like you get up 5 minutes before you have to just turn on the computer and get going. It's like I can go outside and feed the chickens and feed the pigs and come back in. And then like I can go out on lunch and water the, you know, the plants during the day and get some outside time. And then with Andrew getting home from work at like 3, you know, it's like realistically, we have the whole evening, you know, to do stuff. And then we're both off on the weekends. I think what's hard for me is like when you add in like the content creation, like I said, I used to do like 5 reels a week. Like it was crazy how much content I was pushing out. And I look at some of, you know, the gals and guys that are like doing that still. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are machines. Like good for you for doing that. Now what we try to do honestly is like Andrew helps a lot. Like he helps a lot with, he like is like, what do you need? Like, what can I do? Can I film you? Can I like help push you to edit? Like, what do we need to get and do? Can I help with being on the other side of the camera, like filming with me, which is like, I love it because he knows his stuff. So like having him on our YouTube is great. But no, I just don't like, it's fun. Like we're doing it for fun and, you know, we're doing it to share our knowledge and stuff. And like I said, we're growing tomatoes and stuff. So it's like, I just try not to like hold myself too accountable. Maybe I should hold myself accountable more, I guess, but like, you know, just enjoy it.
With your traumatic experience with Instagram and your reels and like blowing up overnight, what made you decide to be like, oh, I'm going to do YouTube too now?
Yeah, I think it was just because so everything happened on Instagram, and then my page, like, that blew up or whatever for a little bit. And then I stopped posting probably in the fall of 2024. Like, I stopped posting like pretty religiously, I guess you would say, on Instagram, and was like, it was like just realizing how much I enjoy watching YouTube. And I was like, this is just what I want to do. Like, when people would message me on Instagram, they're like, I just love your content because I love, like, I love talking to you and I love hearing you talk, and like, you're just like, you're funny and you seem genuine. And so I was like, well, maybe I could do that on YouTube. Like, maybe I could just like be myself. And I haven't still quite figured out how to bring myself fully through on YouTube. Like, I'll watch the videos and I'm like, oh girl, that is not you. Like, I'm like, that is not you. But like, it takes time to like realize that you're, just like figure out how to be yourself fully, I guess. But YouTube is just like less, knock on wood, less toxic than Instagram. I also don't really use YouTube for myself. Like, I'm not like scrolling through YouTube. Like, I'll subscribe back to people who I want to support, who are supporting me, like the whole thing. But like, I'm not like, I don't really care what my algorithm on my YouTube looks like. And so I think it's just like a different environment. Also, my YouTube it's a lot more of just like the day-to-day, the homestead stuff and like what we're doing. And so although like my opinions of what I believe in don't change, like they're still who they are, it's just probably not something that really comes up on YouTube, because like my goal is to not, like you said, like I want our YouTube page at Little V Farm, like it's my husband and I both, like we just want to talk about growing things and we want to talk about homesteading, and we don't want to talk about either side of it. Like, I just want to be able to talk about, can we just talk about plants, please? So like, that is the goal, is like just to be able to talk about plants. And I think it's probably possible on YouTube. Hopefully it's possible.
I think so. Just, I mean, with like 2+ years of YouTubing experience under my belt at this point, like people do leave mean comments occasionally, and sometimes they're just like not trying to be mean, but it comes across as mean. It's a lot less common than Instagram. I feel like Instagram is just the Wild West of like hateful people, and
yeah,
they all flock to tell you you're doing something wrong or that you are wrong. And on YouTube, it's more people trying to instruct you, in my experience. They're
like
trying,
they know better.
Yeah, like it's not them trying to be mean, it's more of like a you should do this instead of what you're doing, because they're trying to be helpful, but it's just kind of annoying.
I don't know. I guess the people who are offended by my existence on YouTube.
You get a lot more rude comments than I do, to be fair. I will say that. Like, about your appearance. I don't know if it's just because it's like you're a solo female homesteader and you're posting videos by yourself. I feel like it has to be that and your nose ring. It's got to be those two things. Like, people just...
The fucking nose ring. They hate it.
It's triggering. I mean, that's got to be, though, because like I'll post like, literally like a garden update on Instagram, and I'll have somebody tell me like I look like I have like, I can't even say some of the things people say that are so ugly about like my appearance, and but then it's like on my YouTube, people are like, great job on the tomatoes. I'm like, all right, you do get a bit of mansplaining a bit on YouTube, but like you said, like I can take that much more than somebody who's like just throwing slurs at me for no reason, or like telling me they're gonna blow up my farm or something. Like, that's just like wild.
You've said it kind of jokingly to this point, but more seriously, have you ever genuinely, truly thought about just throwing the towel in and quitting?
Like homesteading or social media, or both?
Homestead. Well, both, but mostly aimed towards homesteading.
No, never, not once. The only thing we've talked about was if God forbid something like, true act of God happened where like destruction came through, we would potentially pick up and then just go even small, like go just permanently mobile. Like, we would get some sort of like van or like, like something and do that. Cause like Andrew and I are like that disgusting couple who literally like we just really enjoy being around each other genuinely, and we really enjoy spending time together. And we could fully survive in a van together, like no problem. Like, we 100% could live in like a van together. So that's the only thing we've said, that we would stop it would be an act of God or something. But like otherwise, like no, I could not imagine not doing this. Makes me sad.
All right, so as a content creator on top of being a homesteader, what are some of the behind the scenes aspects of homesteading that aren't always represented on social media?
I feel like those are like, those are the group chat questions, right? Like those are the questions, like the stuff that you ask like your good homesteading friends offline are like those things that you're like, yo, I could not put this on the internet. Like people would cancel me so hard or people would lose their mind. Like I think the biggest thing is probably like the state of most people's chickens. Like people want to act like their chickens are not constantly in a state of like disheveled, molting, like someone's got a bumblefoot, somebody's pecking on, Peggy's head. Like I just think like the state of chickens in general, they will eat their own poop. They poop on everything. Poop is everywhere. And like this, it doesn't smell bad to me. I don't know. Like we don't have a stinky homestead. Like I know some people probably have stinky homesteads and that's cool. Like, do you? We don't have a stinky homestead, so that's not a problem. But I just think in general, like, yeah, like the animal care, like I had somebody tell me that I have a pretty homestead. And I was like, oh, thank you. Like that is like the ultimate. I was like, oh my God, what a nice compliment. Because like if you could see some of the things, you know what I mean? Like if you could see some of the things. But yeah, I think a lot of just like I think the general like death and destruction, like people don't like to share. I do. So like I can't really say that there's much that I don't share because like I'm pretty transparent about the homestead. But I think people acting like they have hardwire cloth on every part of their chicken coops and runs, they're lying. I think everyone who says that they have their chicken, their hardwire cloth buried 2 feet under the ground, they're lying. People that say that they walk out and check their chicken door every single night to make sure it's closed, they're lying. Like they're automatic doors, they're not. Like you go in with best laid intentions, and you might do it most of the time. But it's like flossing. Like if you're saying you're flossing twice a day, you're lying. Yeah, I know you're lying, and it's okay. Like I'm not judging you for it. A lot of people say that, but like we know.
I will say I don't floss twice a day, but I do I tuck my birds in every single night.
And like there's definitely like it's one or the other. You either have the people that their chickens are like their baby, and I get it. Like you're like they're all named, and we make sure they're all in they have their own spot in the roost bar, and we make sure they're closed up 100%. But like not around here, partner.
It's mostly I don't think I would do it if I just had chickens, to be fair. I would probably just let their door close for them. They have chick cozies. But my ducks, I have 5 ducks, and they're literally sitting ducks, and we have predators, and I'm scared that the skunk's gonna get back in there and attack them, and they just sit in the run all night. They don't go in when their door closes, so we have to go out there before bed every night and like put them into their little cubby and close the door because they're not very smart. That's pretty much the gist of it. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's looking to do what you're doing with homesteading, what would it be?
I think it's a balance of like everyone tells you like, oh, take your time, like you should spend the first year like sun mapping everything and figuring out like sun direction and shade and like your climate. It's seeds. Like throw them in the ground. Like anything will grow if you try. That's like our big thing. We always say on our YouTube, like our motto is like anything grows if you try. Because I just got so sick of people being like, hi, it's June. Should I put this seed in the ground? Like, I don't know. Do you think that half a cent seed is going to like make or break it? Put it in the ground. It's certainly not going to do anything in the shelf. So like, I think it's just like, just go for it. Also, plants are much more resilient than people give them credit for. If you put something in the ground and it requires 10 degrees this way, 10 degrees that way, a few inches of extra space here, a few inches, just try growing it, because I think you'll be surprised that things acclimate. Like we learned a lot of that because of the greenhouse and doing greenhouse gardening, which that's my other thing. Like don't start with greenhouse gardening, but we learned because we would have stuff in the greenhouse and it was like 127 degrees in the greenhouse, like burning up, and things were like that shouldn't survive. We're like cruising, like absolutely cruising in there. We're like, what is going on? Why is this sage like so happy right now? And like, why are all these herbs, like, why is the lavender just doing so wonderful in 130-degree heat? And it was because we started it in there. We like started it in there as seeds and we let it do its thing in there and it just kind of got used to it. I mean, did it do great? Probably not, but like, did it adapt? Yeah. And so technically somebody who lives in a really hot area would probably like, oh, I could never grow that. I don't know. Maybe you could if you try. So just please don't get caught up in the rules of gardening because they are plants and you cannot control them. So thinking that a zone is going to be the like deciding factor and if something can grow in your area or not, it's not. So just don't listen.
We're always fans of rules are not rules. They're vague guidelines. All right. So if people want to find you, they want to support you, where are all the places they can find you and all the ways that they can support you?
Over the last couple of weeks, we really have kind of made the personal choice and like mental health choice to focus on YouTube. So we are Little V Farm on all platforms, but if you want to support us and really, be behind what we're trying to go behind, it would be our YouTube channel. I just like I said, with some of the changes recently with like Meta and everything, it's just I want to get rid of any toxicity I can, and so we are going to be focusing on that. And with like our YouTube, like I said, we'll be posting shorts every day of just like our random day-to-day stuff, and then it'll be a mixture of instructional videos of things we're doing in the garden and with animals, day in the life stuff, and then just like me just like living. So I think it's just like a full cycle of us on our YouTube. So that's it, the big one, YouTube.
And we'll make sure we link those down in the description, especially the YouTube one. We'll make sure that one's at the top. But we just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast and talking with us, and maybe we'll have you on again in the future and we can go through some other specific topic that we've mastered at that point, or we can read our hate comments together and just hang out.
I would love it. I love chatting with you guys, and yeah, have me back. Hopefully I can like successfully like tell you about butchering a pig later this year, or like, just something that I know we're going to have to do this year. Hopefully I'll be able to be like, oh my gosh, we did it. Hopefully. I'm sure we will. But
that would be great. Honestly, that would be great. We should do that. Thanks for joining us on this episode of She Said Homestead. We hope you enjoyed our chat. Before we say goodbye, we'd love to hear from you. Send your homesteading stories to us at shesaidhomestead@gmail.com. We can't wait to share them on the air. To stay connected, follow us on Instagram for updates and sneak peeks at what's coming up next.
If you like video podcasts, make sure you subscribe to the She Said Homestead YouTube channel too. We can't thank you enough for being part of the She Said Homestead community. Until next time, happy homesteading.